What's up, guys? My name's Kralub, and today I am going to be going over why I decided to convert to Catholicism in 2025. So, I'll just start off giving my background. So, I actually grew up in the Free Methodist Church. It was a really beautiful church. My dad was actually the pastor there, um, and he was actually ordained in the Anglican Church. But yeah, it was a great church. But he decided to retire about 6 years ago, and this kind of left me and my wife thinking, let's go see if we can, try different churches. Because I'd been helping out there in the worship band. I was a drummer there, and we decided we just wanted to look around and see if there's something else that we might like. Um, so we went to this evangelical church, and it was really great. But eventually there was like a church split over the leaders. The leaders had some disagreements over the eldership structure, and so we decided to leave that church. And I think there was always this feeling of something lacking. Like, why are we not? Why do we not want to do communion every week? Like, at my dad's church, it was beautiful because we had these traditions like communion, and growing up, as a kid, I thought it was kind of boring, but as I got older, I started to respect it more and understand, like, why are we doing this and what are the benefits to it. So, um, I kind of started to consider traditional churches. I did consider Catholicism in the past because my best friend is Catholic, and he had some pretty good arguments for it. Me and him would actually debate a lot as a kid, so it's kind of funny. But eventually I became Catholic. But, um, so yeah, I started looking at traditional churches, and, on Twitter, the traditional stuff was kind of booming. Like you'd see a lot of, like, Orthodox memes and memes about saints and stuff, and I thought the saints were so cool, and I was like, wow, that's something I really look up to. These people are awesome, and just I got to see some of the things they said about the Eucharist and about Mary, and I was like, wow, this is beautiful, and it's something I haven't heard it in this perspective before. So, funny enough, I actually decided to look into Orthodox, uh, Eastern Orthodox, and you know, funny thing is, I actually got like a Orthodox crucifix because I thought that was like the coolest one. Um, but yeah, I loved like the mysticism and the saints, and I it just made me start to want to try to find like an apostolic church, and traditional, something rooted, since the super early church history. So, yeah, I started watching, like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Harmony. It's like he's a Orthodox guy that makes like really cool animations. I highly recommend it. But I watched those, and I was just blown away by the mysticism and the beauty of tradition. And then, I would also, this got me to watch like YouTube videos. And so this church actually, this is something I was building when I was going through that journey. I would build this church in this house, and I would just watch like Trent Horn videos, and he had some really great perspectives. Like, growing up, you hear all these like myths about Catholics, like, oh, they worship Mary and things like that. And most people don't dig into that stuff, but that's actually not true. And Trent Horn does a really great job at explaining these things. And so, yeah, I'd watch his videos, and I would also watch his debates and rebuttals to like evangelical pastors that would make videos. And then it kind of just That, and I also watched Redeemed Zoomer, and it's funny because he wants people to join the mainline Protestant churches, but he's also happy if people become Catholic. But he kind of made me realize like the beauty of he made me realize the value of beauty in the church and the theology of beauty. And then also, if you think about the church as like a kingdom, it makes a lot more sense why we would want to have like a kingdom and have resources so that we can spread the gospel easier. And so his videos really led me to want something beautiful and something with tradition. So yeah, I watched his videos, I watched Trent Horn, and then eventually I decided to read some Catholic books. And so I read that book, Why I'm Catholic. I think that's the name of it. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it's called Why I'm Catholic. And I think it's been written by a priest. But yeah, that was a really great book to... He went over like the main apologetics for defending the faith. And also, I would say the biggest reason why I converted... these videos were great on YouTube, but I would say the main thing was this book. It's called Reading the Church Fathers. And this book was absolutely amazing. I just read it on audiobook when I went to work. And, I might have these theories like, oh, that's kind of a weird theology that they have. Why do they believe that? But, it's good to look at what has the church been doing for thousands of years. And so, this book on reading the church fathers, I read that, and it just went from the beginning of the church up to, the Roman Empire, and then even after that. And you got to see, like, in the beginning, it was actually like home churches, because they were persecuted so heavily for teaching. And so that's why they did home churches back then. And, home churches are still going on today in places that are heavily persecuted. But yeah, it went over that. It also went over like baptism. Some people debated in the past like, oh, you should have full submersion. Some people said, okay, we can do it, by a river or something, and then it also like talked about Polycarp, which is who I chose as my patron saint. It also went over things like relics. Like relics have been a thing forever. And, my biggest thing was like, why did we abandon all this stuff that the church has had for so long? And so yeah, some of these issues like the Immaculate Conception I would say my main issues were with the Mary theologies. Because, as Protestants, it's not something we grow up learning. So what I did was like, with these main issues I had, I would actually look up like videos and read about these things. And so like the Immaculate Conception, I'll make videos on these things later, explaining why I believe them now. But I started to get a good understanding of these theologies. And it's kind of funny because my wife, she... at this time, she didn't really like the Catholic Church, and I mean, she saw there was great things about it, but she just thought it wasn't for her, and she had some issues with it too, just like I did. These things are things you have to research, and so I would watch like these videos of Trent Horn, and she would have arguments against them, and it's funny because I started to believe what he was talking about, and she would kind of notice that and be like, oh, what about this and this, and I would be like, oh yeah, I can actually understand why they think this because blah blah blah, and it was just kind of funny because I wasn't even Catholic, but I was doing Catholic apologetics with my wife. So, yeah, so that was kind of a funny thing. Um, and I will say, like, in that evangelical church, when it split, you know, after being at a church I loved so much for so long, and then seeing how this little issue of, like, church authority with the elders, I'm like, okay, I can kind of understand now why authority is so important in the church. Um, because if you have, like, a pope, which is the head of the whole church, you have someone who can be like, no, this is actually the way we do it, and this is why. Instead of having two people that have their own interpretations of authority. Um, so, and then, I saw some things in my life where, people were doing some things that, they said they were Christian, but it really didn't seem like it. And I thought, like, I want to join a church where people have a source of truth that they can look at. If you look up on Google, what does the Catholic Church think about, let's say, like, IVF or something like that? Well, you'll get an answer instantly. There's very few things that they don't have a view on, and that's something I wanted, that solidity, so that I have something firm to stand on, especially for my family. I have kids, and I want to raise them right in a good church. And so, yeah, that firm foundation and that firm authority, that's something that I really connected with and that I really loved. And also, it's a church that's unwavering. Like, there's obviously been issues in every church, but this church is still here. The Catholic Church is still strong, and it has beautiful theology and tradition, and it's just something that I really enjoy. So yeah, that's mostly the story about why I converted. It was pretty cool. Like, I went through RCIA. Starting out, whenever I first decided I wanted to join the church, basically after reading that book, Reading of the Church Fathers, I actually emailed the lady and I was like, hey, I've been studying this and I really want to become Catholic, and I think that I've learned enough about it. And she's like, well, that's not usually what people do. Usually they'll go through the process. And, I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. So yeah, I went through the process, and I'm really glad I did it, because you learn a lot of things that you think you might know, but you actually don't, about the church. And it's just cool to get a really firm understanding of it. So yeah, me and my wife, we would switch off because someone has to watch the kids. And so we did that, and yeah, it was really great. And eventually on Easter, we went to the Easter Vigil and got confirmed and had our First Communion, which was a beautiful experience. I actually felt like when the priest prayed over me for my conversion, I felt kind of like a fire in my heart, and I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or what it was, but it was a really powerful experience. So yeah, I highly recommend that you join the Catholic Church. It's a really great church that you can raise your family in, and let me know if you have any reasons why you don't want to join, or tell me if you did join, how you like it, and I would love to hear about it. So, blessings to you all, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.